Why is this important for today, especially for businesses?
Yeah. I know what you're all thinking, that you saw that little boy build the blocks in perfect order and spent a lot of time and energy making sure that he got it perfect, and that is work ethic. You wanted to hire him on the spot, but unfortunately he's not going to have working papers for another 20 years. So you have to hold off, right? And that's a lot of time. We think about this challenge as a 20 years problem. We can solve it today, but we're not going to see the fruits of that labor until 20 years. And I think that's unfortunately a real falsehood in this situation. The business community is dealing with this problem every single day, and we don't necessarily hit that nail on the head to say that this is an ECE issue. Right now in the US, there's 6.9 million open jobs. And those jobs are open in a low, of course we have low unemployment, but we cannot find the qualified workers to fill those jobs. That's a skills of tomorrow problem. But we also know that right now we have 60% of businesses cannot take on new work because they cannot fill that workforce. And 40% would have the ability to take on new work, but they cannot fill the challenges that they're feeling in their own employees. So businesses are in the business of industry, right? But they're also in the business of employing. And this has become, early childhood education has become a major barrier to employment for their incumbent workforce and their future workforce. We do not have high quality childcare everywhere, right? And so we're competing for spots. And if you do not have a quality place to put your child, you're not going to be able to sit in your office and do the work that you need to do. $3 billion is lost annually on the breakdown of childcare services every single day. So I think the challenge is that companies are dealing with this right now, and we're not necessarily calling it out as an issue that is an ECE issue right in this state and across the U.S.
So it's an issue that exists, and I know that we've looked at it at MEC for a number of years. We've talked about this issue. Lori, from the public sector side of things, you spent a little time in the private sector, you're also in the public sector now. What are we doing to maybe not reinvent the wheel, but really focus on these areas from a quality child care approach that includes the education component?
Well, I was thinking when she talked that we are actually doing a lot of things right to address this issue in Mississippi. So as the director of the State Workforce Investment Board, we're very focused on something called Prepare, Connect, and Sustain with our workforce right now. So the sustaining part of our workforce, we have some great examples of business and industry right now that are doing the public-private partnership idea that you mentioned. So Milwaukee Tools, many of you have heard me talk about in Greenwood, Mississippi. They, some innovative ideas of how our state's helping that directly relate to childcare. Milwaukee Tools has added more jobs in our state recently and wanted to recruit more women into the plant to work there. And so our Department of Human Services is working with them to open a child care facility on site as well as a healthcare facility to help sustain their workforce and keep their employees working there. KLLM is doing the same thing, working with our state agencies where our businesses are getting assistance from our state agencies to help provide that child care quality. So we're helping build the quality child care at the same time that we're helping the employer provide a high quality workforce. Many of you heard about our $10.6 million grant award recently for early childhood education. I see Governor Bryant smiling a little bit there. Very exciting, and what that grant will do will really help, brought it up here with me, expand and here it is, the family-based unified plan that Governor Bryant's State Early Childhood Advisory Council with Mimo Parisi leading the CCAC Council on that is a family-based approach that focuses on helping the family get the services they need for job placement at the same time that we're providing high-quality care. So multiple examples in our state of how we're leading the nation in many ways, and this grant's a good example of that, of how we're working with business and industry and our government agencies to help provide the highest quality care that we can in our state. And that comes from years of working with child care. I was thinking while Catherine was talking, Mississippi Economic Council has been a leader on focused on this early childhood effort. I see Haley Fasackerly in the audience and others that have sponsored and focused on early childhood education for so many years. So I really attribute many of these successes to you all in the business community for bringing this to the forefront in the first place.
And I guess this, bringing it to the forefront is part of the key issue. And Rhea, from a philanthropy standpoint, from the Kellogg Foundation standpoint, they funded this research that was done through the chamber by Catherine. Why is it so important that this is one of the focuses that we're looking at as we go forward?
So, Scott, I thank you for the opportunity to serve on this panel. The W.K. Kellogg Foundation, as you all, if anybody that's had any affiliation with the work we do, we are focusing on early childhood. That's one of the biggest components of our work. And the fact that in the presentation that Catherine made, the fact that we consistently see the linkages between workforce development and economic development, early childhood is key to that. I have to add to what Lori shared about the commitment of MEC. Early on, about 20 years ago, we were sitting there kind of bumping each other and a little giddy. We were very young. We were teenagers when we started in this work. But at any rate, the foundation has constantly and consistently invested in early childhood education because we understand the life cycle. From cradle to grave, there's an education life cycle. And early on, I'm so excited that our board and our leadership made the decision to put money into early childhood education. We've worked with MEC and the business community throughout these years to help sponsor and be a part of the road shows that have consistently taken place, early childhood days at the Capitol, Spark initiatives called Spark, supporting partnerships to assure ready kids, Excel by 5, building blocks. All this work is really what has led to what we're able to realize today in the state in terms of acknowledging that early childhood education is important. And you know, we've had a number of meetings recently, whether it's the annual meeting or previous days at the Capitol, where business leaders have consistently said, you know, we get people that don't have basic soft skills. We can teach them the technical stuff, the hardcore skills when they get to the workplace. But all the soft skills, and Secretary Hoseman pointed that out, things like character, work ethic, all those things are grounded and rooted in what is, of course, given by parents who are the children's first teachers, but secondly, and most important, is what they experience as young children, as infants and toddlers, to prepare them to be able to learn and become successful students and ultimately successful employees in any business across the state.
And Catherine, you've actually been looking at this from a nationwide standpoint. Where does Mississippi fit in what we're doing to try to improve where we are today and so that we do have a better tomorrow?
One of the reasons I'm so happy to be here is that, in fact, Mississippi is one of the absolute leaders in the country on this. Governor Bryant has played an extraordinary role in recognizing just that the period of first 3 years of life, how critical those are, and I think what he's provided leadership on is understanding a two-generation approach that moves whole families ahead together. So when you have high-quality childcare, you're doing two things at the same time. You're developing that young child, which is your workforce of tomorrow, and you're enabling that family to work and be self-sustaining and to move themselves ahead. So it's childcare is the pivot point for a two-generation approach that moves whole families ahead at the same time. And Mississippi is perhaps the leading state in the country in using that frame to think about how to move families ahead.
Good job, Governor. Rhea, as we think down the road, what are some of the things that are ahead in this area, and what can we be doing as a business community to be focusing on?
Yeah, a couple of things that I want to touch base on. And he said that back in, the late 1800s, and it's still true today. So getting that message out, making sure that we focus on that not only folks in this room understand that we go back and share it with colleagues across the state. But just as important, we need to realize that there are populations who are more vulnerable. You saw the graphs and the information that she shared that gave the percentages and the breakdowns. If we realize, one of the reports that we also funded was the business case for racial equity. In 20 years, when today's children are entering the workplace, people of color will represent over half the working age population. So we need to make sure that we focus our emphasis and work with vulnerable children and children of color to make sure that workforce is ready and productive and able to do the things we need them to do to help boost our economy. That's one of the major things that I wanted to point out. The fact that for every dollar that we invest in early childhood education, it's a $13 return on that investment. So the business community has to realize, our legislative leadership has to realize, communities and parents across the state have to realize that we really cannot afford to take baby steps in the area of early childhood education. We have to be in search of the quantum leap. If you go and talk to any kindergarten teacher or pre-K teacher across the state and find out how these students are doing, then you'll find out and know how we'll have the workforce that we need in 20 years.
And Caitlin, the U.S. Chamber in general and state chambers across the country as well have been focusing really on workforce and education very intently over the last few years. The early childhood component obviously is a big part of that now. So going forward, what do you see as the next steps?
Sure, yeah, you're hard-pressed to find a business that isn't thinking about education and workforce as a major challenge and opportunity to really the sustainability of their industry or their company specifically. And so the Chamber thinks about education and workforce as an entire pipeline, starting at the earliest years and frankly never ending. We're always reinventing ourselves. We're always going back and looking at education as that ability to retrain or focus on new efforts. And so we have to think about this as a lifelong learning enterprise. Unfortunately, there's a leaky pipe, right? And the focus on ECE for us, and I credit Catherine a lot for the conversations that we had probably, 28 months ago at this point, where we thought about this as truly a two-generation approach, because you cannot simply solve one piece and expect that to solve all of our problems. You have to be thinking about it as multidisciplinary and also focusing on the challenges that are unique to every community and every state. And truly, we all applaud the work that you're doing in Mississippi. Catherine's gone around the country talking about this issue. I've gone around the country talking about this issue, and there's never a time that we're not calling out Mississippi as the place to be. So, congrats.
And finally, Lori, put on your hat as not only an educator, policy person, but now focusing on workforce so intently as the Executive Director of State Workforce Investment Board. How do we find a way to do more programs? You mentioned Milwaukee Tools, some of these others. What do we do to really accelerate this to the next level?
Well, I was thinking, while all of you were talking, that a lot of businesses don't know where to reach out to get information about how to do this. And so I'd like to point out that the State Workforce Investment Board would be a good point of contact, and that's exactly what happened with Milwaukee Tools and the other examples. We can connect those dots for you about how to build this child care piece on sustaining your workforce at your industry. I think that's a good first start, and I think it's such an important issue. There's been so many discussions in our state. A lot of times we think about early childhood, and that means just pre-K, and that means, oh, we're doing that in our state. We have 4-year-old pre-K, we have the collaboratives, and those are all really wonderful, but we need to build both at the same time. So as we're building our pre-K system, continuing to build this coordinated system of childcare combined as our workforce is growing, our business and workforce are growing at such a rapid pace. It's really important we keep these quality childcare parts at the highest quality at the same time. So I would like to just recommend that our Department of Human Services and Department of Health that help coordinate those, as well as SWIB, are more than willing to help. And our SWIB website is swib.ms.gov. Just my little plug. And one more plug, the Governor's Workforce Summit, for more information on all of these, will be on January 23rd here at the Marriott. And you can go to the website for more information on that as well.
Would y'all please join me in thanking our panel for being with us today? And a special thanks to Catherine for the work that she's done.
Today I was here to talk about the importance of early childhood education, what's happening in the state of Mississippi, to share some of the good news about the $10.6 million grant we were just awarded to expand our family-based unified plan called Connected for Success that will help more children and families in the state of Mississippi. So to expand on Dr. Stevens' idea of how we help the workforce of today and the workforce of tomorrow is to talk about what's happening in our state today.
What potential does this offer?
The grant application has a ton of potential. The main thing is that we get to spend the first year on coordinating all the early childhood efforts in the state. We've never really been able to spend a lot of time doing that before. So all the services for ages children 0 to 5, including Head Start, private child care centers, church programs, pre-K, everything under the age of 5, we'll all be working together for the first time, and then we'll spend a good year trying to improve the quality of all of those programs, as well as helping the families of those young children find job services if they need it, find job training if they need it, look at the way that employers can help retain people in their jobs by providing high quality child care. And then the best part is, by receiving this $10.6 million this year, it makes us eligible to apply for $50 million in years 2, 3, and 4 of the grant. So that could be a game changer in a state like Mississippi for early childhood.
The message here today, representing the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, is basically that early childhood education is very important to the state. Our mission and our goal is to support children, to make sure that they have the best experiences that they can as early on in terms of education, and then to make sure that their families are working and able to have those kinds of supports necessary, and also to make sure that their communities support them and nurture them so that they can be prepared for opportunities in the workforce. And I think that's the critical piece. The best workforce development and economic development for the state of Mississippi and for the nation as a whole begins with early childhood education. All the soft skills that employers constantly talk about and say that they need and look for in employees, that doesn't start in elementary school, that doesn't start in middle, high school, or even college. They always explain that they can teach the critical skills for the specific job, but the soft skills start at home and start in early settings and in communities that work to support children and give them everything they need so that they're successful in life. I also like to share that we have to make sure that we reach our most vulnerable and children and communities of color, because when you look 20 years down the road, they're going to make up at least half the workforce in 20 years. So we better start now so that they'll be prepared to step in and fill those positions that will be available at that time.
There's 6.9 million jobs open in America right now, and we can't find the skilled and qualified workers to fill those jobs. And we think of this truly as a multi-generational challenge. Part of that challenge of filling these jobs is finding the qualified employees, and those qualified employees have a number of challenges that are barriers to entry to the workforce. Childcare is one of those barriers.
What recommendations do you have for Mississippi?
Mississippi is actually leading the states in the work that this government is taking on, this state government is taking on, in solving these challenges with business as a public-private partnership together, thinking about how can they come with some funding and how can businesses come to solve the challenge together.
Are you optimistic about the potential that offers?
Oh, absolutely. If we can think about the long-term needs of a community and solve those together as a full community, government, business.
This is the Mississippi Economic Council. We're the State Chamber of Commerce. We're a private, nonprofit organization. We're funded solely by our business membership, and we have businesses from all sectors of the economy across the state of Mississippi that are part of MEC.
What are we doing here today?
Today is our annual Capitol Day. It's always held the very first week of the legislative session, first Thursday of the session, because that gets us kicked off right from the beginning. It's a chance for people to come in from across the state, hear from legislative leaders, find out what's going on at the Capitol, and really get a feel for some of the issues that we'll be talking about throughout the legislative session.
MEC today highlighted early childhood. Tell us, why did you select this topic?
Well, it's something that's really at the forefront right here in Mississippi, because to be honest with you, I think a lot of people don't understand some of the strides that are being made there between our Early Childhood Collaborative, which really is focusing on like the pre-K 4-year-olds, and some of the things that Governor Bryan is doing through additional dollars through other federal funding and other departments to really put money into child care centers to help early child care education at all ages from birth up to starting school is starting to make a difference. We're seeing it in our numbers of prepared students, and I think that's where we are. The reason the focus today is we know we still have a ways to go. We still have a number of students who are not being served properly or don't have access to a quality child care facility that provides that educational component. And I think that's why it's so important to focus on it, because we need to continue to do that, because it does have an impact on the workforce. The education side of it is evident. You're going to build a better foundation. That means greater success when the child gets to school, greater success in high school, opportunities to do well in college, and on a technical career pathway, and both are extremely important, and then success in the workplace. But what we see today is having access to quality care allows the mom, the dad, others to be able to go to work, be part of today's workforce, knowing they have their child in a quality child care center that's getting the type of experience and programming that's going to make them have that foundation for success in the future.
At the beginning of the legislative session, tell us, what are MEC's priorities for this legislative session, and also with this being an election year, what are the things that MEC wants to focus on?
Well, I think our main focus is workforce, and I think it really is how do we provide more opportunities for our students to be able to get the type of assessments that they need, whether it be through ACT Work Keys or other programs, to give them an idea of what pathways are available and how do they really begin to understand what jobs are available, what skills those jobs need, what skills may match with what they like to do. I think if we can find some ways to do that, and I think from a legislative standpoint, we'll begin to work to increase opportunities for doing that, just like we've increased opportunities for taking the ACT across the state. I think there's some chance that we can really see a big impact on our workforce in the future.
Well, this is an exciting time for all the business community to come together. This is a leadership, and so the takeaways are we need to come together. We need to, strengthen our workforce, prepare our education, look to the future. This is a very strategic time. So it's exciting when you have all the leaders here, and they're beginning to continue that pathway on where we see our future. What do we do to enhance? And again, it's a great opportunity for everyone to be together and talk about this vision.
What role does MEC play in helping a legislation get through the legislature?
Well, MEC is critical. They, again, the coalition of all the leaders, across our state that are here, and they're talking about what are the legislations that's important, what changes the future, where do we uplift and change that makes a difference for our communities, our workforce, and then our children. Again, there's so many different parts and pieces that come together, and here is so informational. It's so critical for these leaders to be together and have the conversation with our legislators to make a difference.
It's a very timely theme. Here in Mississippi, agriculture is our #1 industry. It is employing 29% of our workforce, and yet the average age of a farmer in Mississippi is 63 years old. So we're facing a situation where we've got to be intentional about developing the next generation of agriculture workforce. It's a large gap that we have between the demand of jobs and the supply of skilled agriculture labor. So we're working closely with the community colleges, with Mississippi State University curriculum, partnering with private industry to develop certified curriculum for Mississippi agriculture workforce for the next generation. So when a student comes through maybe high school, then they can be certified to fill that specific job in that specific community. Maybe it's horticulture, maybe it's operating these large, very technical tractors today, and maybe it's livestock related or even retail agribusiness. But we are very excited about rolling out agriculture academies all across the state.
What kind of a career is it for a young person to get into agriculture?
You know, a lot of people have a misconception about agriculture today. It's not hoeing in the field weeds out of the crop. It is very technical. We have a drone program today that is assessing soil. We have technological advances in satellite imagery, even operation of equipment today. It requires some very specific and skilled training, whether that might be forestry equipment or row crop equipment, large tractors, combines. You can't just go buy a piece of equipment today and go out and operate it. You've got to know exactly the buttons to push and the technology and take advantage of the technology of today. So these are exciting, high-tech, well-paying jobs for Mississippi students in the future.
I'm here talking with them about issues that affect business and government, and that's transportation, how we need to really implement a program to fix our highways, how we need to accept federal money to keep our hospitals open that's affecting economic development, how we're training our kids to have technical skills so that we can have job development and early childhood education, which is all those issues are things that the Mississippi Economic Council has been been involved in for years. And so those are the issues that I'm really concerned about.
And MEC is an organization that brings businesses from all across the state, all sectors of the economy, all sizes of business, and we speak as a unified voice to make things happen in Mississippi.
How can people get more information?
It's real simple. MEC.ms, just MEC.ms, that's our website.